After Letter to the World 1 and 2, Marketa and I and Evelyn decided to extract the duet performed by Julie Verdone and Ned Allen in these pieces and develop it within the context of an abandoned bank. Switch. In Rochester, New York. There we go. In an abandoned bank in Rochester, New York. The piece existed within a larger art event taking place in the bank that included 18 other sound and video installations. So the rooms that we had was we had this vault. We fought hard to get that vault, but we got that vault with all of the safety deposit boxes. And we got this room, which we created this installation, this marble hallway next to a marble staircase, and we created this installation. The balcony, we had video, and then we had this room. And we also had all the spaces in between those rooms, so the performers would walk across a big bank lobby or through the hallways. And the performance lasted for 3.5 hours, and the performers could come and go as they pleased, and sometimes followed the different performers through the space, sometimes seeing them together. And then when the performers split, the audience had to make the decision of which performer they were going to follow. In each place, the order in which they saw the work was up to the audience. And in each of the 6 spaces, we created choreography, a task, or structured improvisation for the performers. So for example, this was the letter writing room. Our character here, Anna, would write letters to Tom whenever she entered this room, and then crumple them up and throw them on the floor. And then when Tom decided to enter the room, he would sit on the floor and he would uncrumple the letters and read them and respond to the letters through movement. And by the end of the evening, by the end of the 3.5 hours, this was filled with letters. And Marketa Fantova created for the vault an interactive installation placing white objects in all of those different boxes. And they were like letters and pictures and keys and jewelry. And they were all artifacts of Tom and Anne's history together. So the audience members could come in whenever they wanted to and could open the boxes and remove them and touch them and switch which boxes they were in and read the letters. And the performers came in one at a time at different times as well. And giving over control to the audience was a refreshing idea after having just doing these guided performances where I was so careful of the audience. Now, whatever the audience did, the audience did. And for the most part, they interacted easily with the piece. They went into the vault and they opened them, they followed the performers, they witnessed the performers, and even at different times, they took the liberty to change the performance. So it all worked out, actually, for the most part, pretty well. And I'll say for the most part, because there's a couple stories that I won't have time enough to tell, but afterwards maybe we'll talk about some of the more squirrely audience members. In 2010, I went to Kyoto, Japan, thank you, Alfred University, for my sabbatical, and I created a few new site-specific works, one of them being a cinematic walking piece that is currently a work in progress. I spent, because we're creating music for it, it's like 40 minutes of music, and apparently that's a lot of music to create, and I hear about how long it takes to create 40 minutes of music daily. I hear that. So I know now that it takes a long time to create 40 minutes of music. But we spent a month creating a walking route inspired by the sites and places in Kyoto. So, I mean, I walked everywhere, and Kyoto's big, bigger than I had anticipated. So this was the area that I picked, and then I walked all those streets, all those streets, all those streets, over and over and over again, until I finally came up with this route. And the order of this piece is really important. And you start here at the bottom in this very loud urban area. And you can hear the traffic and the river and the people. I mean, it's really loud. You cross the street, and then you thread through, pass through an old ancient shrine, Kenenji, for those of you who've been there, and then through these marketplaces, and then through intimate passageways until you finally get up the top and you walk up the steep hill to the very edge. And at the end, after about 40 minutes, you're at the very top of a hill and you're alone, and it's quiet, and you can hear the birds and the wind, and then you turn around, and you've walked through a graveyard, and you turn around, and this is a very powerful view, and this integration of the graveyard with the cityscape, and how the density and the shape and the size of the tombstone mirror the cityscape is really quite stunning, and especially when you're pretty out of breath, and because you've already seen the other sites that lead up to that. So I'm going to show you a slideshow of the sites in the order while I describe it to you. So this is the beginning. For this work, the audience member is the performer. Each audience member is given an iPod with music that is composed for and inspired by this route, and they're also given a map. On one side of the map are the directions, and on the other side of the map is artwork inspired by Kozue Hasegawa. She was some of you know her, she was an MFA student here and now lives in Japan. Following the map, the audience walks the choreographed route while listening to music created by John Leprade, the composer. And Justin Grigg and I also, and his students also created an interactive Google map of this route that you can access through my website and through our blog. This specific route with the music and the map are what frame the work, and the audience is not separated from the art because they are performing it. They're a part of it. Hopefully, the combination of the length and the order of the walk, the specific sites, the music, the map, and the audience physically experience the work will create a transformative experience. And the music that you heard when you were walking in today, that music is the music that goes with this. So that the music that you heard, and I can play it afterwards, is composed by John for this walk. And it's really something when you come out of this densely packed area where there's so many people, and then you're finally alone going up through this graveyard is really an amazing experience. If any of you are going to Kyoto, let me know, and I'll hook you up. So the last category I'd like to talk about is immersive found choreography. As in the practice of found art, I'm investigating found choreography by framing movement and composition physically and not just conceptually. Framing Edgewood Farms, created last summer, is the first in a series in which I bring attention to existing movement, with a large 11-foot by 17-foot minimal white frame and simple white chairs strategically placed in everyday settings. I invite audience members to sites, in this case to the farm, to spend time together viewing, contemplating, and perceiving a captured event through the frame that was built by Zach Ham and me. The idea for the project came when I was walking home and I passed a farmer, Harold Snyder, haying his field. And I sat and I watched him as he cut the long stalks of grass, creating a beautiful spiral pattern in the field. And then I loved the tall grass next to the cut grass. And then the cut grass he created into these long tubular windrows. And then the windrows, they were like tubular grass snakes, got sucked up into the haying machine. And then the haying machine rhythmically turned the tubes into these great rectangles. And then the rectangular hay bales were then put onto the flatbed trucks, creating these beautiful hay sculptures. They are gorgeous. And I am a big fan. Oh, and all of this happened against the landscape of the beautiful clouds, and there were cows and bobolinks and all sorts of different birds, and the heat of the sun and the smell. It was gorgeous. It was a beautiful sensory experience. And I personally love the work of artists like Maya Lin and Richard Long, and I think the aesthetics of what Harold created was right up there with their work. And although Harold would never call it art, I think he would call it his livelihood or food for cows, I think it's gorgeous. So after seeing the haying, I wanted to physically bring people up to the site, because I realized that, if I took a picture of it and put it on Facebook, it wouldn't capture all of the sensory things that I was experiencing. So I spoke to Harold and asked him if I could do this piece, and he agreed. And 2 years later, this is what we created. Oh! Stop it! This is not what happened. Oh, okay. Check this out. Check that out. Check that out. Okay. Next. Okay. Here we go. Think of thoughts. Yay! I know I'm supposed to be more graceful with that, like, oh, don't worry, but I'm not. With more practice, I'll get that way. At least I didn't cuss, I'm getting better. Okay, so these are some of my cast members. I love them. Wait, hold on. Hold on. Full screen, full screen. My God. Full screen, full screen. Okay, hold on. We're going back. We can't miss those things. Okay, there we go. And they were lovely. They follow Harold around. They love him. So I had the audience walk through all of these different fields that were gated off, so that by the time they got to the frame, they couldn't see any houses. They were in the middle of this beautiful landscape. And because there were cows in different fields, we had to put up signs to, make sure you shut the door so you don't let the cows out. And I thought, I've never done that in a performance before. So there were many things. Oh, and I learned so much about farming and weather. And we put these out. So we created the piece, and Harold was like, yeah, I think it's going to be a go today. So we rushed, and we put that thing up, and then suddenly it started raining. And then it rained for like 17 days. So each day I was supposed to go back to New York, and I was like, I'm sorry, I can't go back. I'm waiting for the rain to stop. And each audience member was given a map, told not to talk on the way up, and a jar of lemonade. They were all told not to wear, to wear a hat and sunscreen. And they were all on call. So these audience members that had expressed interest in going, there's Harold and his lovely daughter Jill, who just had a beautiful baby. Harold gave me the call, and then I called everybody, and everybody arrived. And then sat and watched. The piece was approximately 2 hours. It was a lovely day. And then we just watched. And it was gorgeous. And there wasn't a lot of talking, and the spending the time to, first of all, most people can't get to the site. Unless you know Harold and are like, hi, can I trespass through 4 fields? Like you can't even get to the site. And then once you're here, it's pretty much the best view in all of Alfred. And then those hay bales. So for part of my research, I thought, okay, I'm going to try that out. So they're 40 pounds a piece. I did 3 hay bales. I was like, forget this. It's like super smelly. It's super hard. It's sticky. It's, you know. And so he's 80, and he did 2 full flatbed trucks just while we were sitting there. And then at the end of the performance, Harold was kind enough to then come down and to talk to the audience because people had all sorts of different questions about haying, about things like the bobolinks, like what happened to the birds that nest in this area, you know, I mean, all sorts of questions. And Harold was nice enough to answer all of them and to give us a history of both his farm, and you can buy his book. He has a book. Harold, what's the name of your book? What is it? Okay, so you can buy that from Harold. It's a good book. I recommend it. Jill was driving that truck, or that tractor. So in conclusion, framing site-specific performance, the framing of it is one of the most critical steps that you take in creating this type of work. And I have seen and collaboratively created both site works that were transformative because how the site, the audience, and the performance work together, and site performances that were spoiled because of framing issues. And now more than ever, I am a firm believer in the power of, the transformative power of the performing arts. In this age of electronic virtual communication, I believe in the importance of sharing live arts with people who are gathered together in the same time and place. It's an instant community. People who have made the effort to come out to experience a one-time ephemeral event together. Out of respect for these people and for you, is why I am working to make thoughtful framing choices so you can experience the site performances fully. Thank you for this opportunity to share my work with you.